Welcome to Stocks in Translation, our essential conversation cutting through the market mayhem, the noisy numbers, and hyperbole to give you the information you need for your portfolio. Now, I'm Jared Blikre, and today I'm joined by Robert Rodriguez. He is the head of banking for the Northeast region, Chase for Business, as well as Brooke DiPalma, our intrepid food editor on loan from Q1 earnings. So thank you for taking some time and joining us here today. On the docket, we are talking about the pulse of small business in America. How are small business owners seeing the current economic environment in this year, which is an election year? Our word of the day is adaptability, a key trait of an entrepreneur and what it means to survive and thrive in today's America. And this episode is brought to you by the number 39. That is a percentage of small business owners in the U.S. who are still suffering from inflation. We're going to take a deep dive into exactly why that is. Now, first, it's Small Business Week here at Yahoo Finance, and we're taking the pulse today. So let's just cut through the noise and begin. What is the state of the small business zeitgeist in America right now?
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So first of all, I would say the state of the business is pretty solid based on what we're seeing. Obviously, from a small business community perspective, they are absolutely aware of inflation, as you talked about.
Yeah.
We at JPMorgan, we take the time to poll 500 small business clients on a monthly basis, and we track those sentiments. We consider ourselves a trusted advisor to the small business community. We serve over 6 million of them. So what we're seeing right now in April results, absolutely, they are, concerned at a macro level, as you mentioned, inflation being one, recession, looming, but what I would tell you is that 67% of small businesses are feeling that their business is thriving. So locally, there's a lot of optimism, and they're just finding ways to adapt. And that's why that word of the day, adaptability, is fantastic.
Adaptability on point. I love it.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. You mentioned the survey. Just any other points you'd like to hit in there? Maybe something surprising.
Yeah, I wouldn't say anything surprising per se. What I would tell you is that, from a macro level, we're looking at inflation being a concern. We're looking at cash flow concerns. Staffing still is kind of lingering out there. There's obviously, a lot of jobs out there in the marketplace, but it's really holding on to that staff, from a small business perspective, that's concerning.
I'd like to explore that. We talk about labor from big picture perspectives. We get the monthly stats from the BLS, but what is it like for small businesses out there? There was a huge disruption over the pandemic. Staffing became a nightmare for a lot of small business owners that I talked to here in New York. How have businesses recovered from that?
Yeah, the recovery's been, a slow build, but I would tell you right now, it's more about the quality of the folks that they're staffing up, and then, like as I mentioned earlier, retaining that staffing is critical. At the end of the day, from a small business perspective, and we obviously take it super seriously at Chase, it's all about, making sure that they're staffed up, they're able to, produce on a consistent level, and that we're there to support them every step of the way.
Yeah, and labor inflation has been something that we've been talking about, not only from larger companies, but it also is impacting small businesses as well. How exactly are they able to overcome higher labor costs these days, and what are they doing to offset that?
Yeah, it's tricky. It really is. You talk about the cost for labor is absolutely higher.
Yeah.
What we're finding for small business owners is they're a resilient bunch as well. So it's really finding ways to reduce expenses. Because just the cost of doing business is so high, not just from a labor perspective, just cost of goods and services. Keeping inventory at high levels, is so critical. So at the end of the day, they're trying to be more efficient. Looking for ways to reduce costs where they can, and not necessarily always pass that end cost onto the consumer. They have to raise prices where it's appropriate. We all are feeling it ourselves.
Yes.
And that bag of groceries is much higher today than it
Thinking
was
twice
a year.
before I had the ice cream gallon.
Right. I hear that. So yeah, they're just being smarter in how they operate is really the key there.
What about supply chain problems? I don't hear that every single day in the news like we used to a couple years ago, but and I guess it depends on what kind of business you have. Is it manufacturing-based small business? Is it service-oriented? Most small businesses are probably service-oriented, but what are the supply chain problems that are still facing some of these business owners?
Yeah, so it's still delays in shipping from overseas. We're seeing that, and then getting those goods and materials, through the process to the end consumer. I can tell you just locally, from myself, I have a 15-year-old son, and he wanted a hoodie from some company. So I said, okay,
Probably a limited time drop, special edition, can't get anywhere else.
You must have seen the very same.
Yeah, we may have ordered the same hoodie, and just the ease of purchasing the hoodie, super simple. Just click here, click there. But to get the actual product, it's taken now like 3 weeks, and every day he's hassling me. Where is it? Where is it? Finally arrived yesterday. He got to wear it today. So it's like examples like that. Like you multiply that out across the country, you could understand where as a consumer, I might be frustrated with that small business, but I understand that, at the end of the day, they're working through the same constraints that I'm seeing on the, day-to-day running, business banking here in the Northeast for Chase.
Yeah. So we've ticked through a couple of different concerns here. We did labor. We're going to do a deep dive on inflation and the Fed. What about cash flow? That was another thing you mentioned. I guess that relates to a lot of the other topics, but how are companies keeping the amount of cash they need on hand? Because it's all about making payroll, and your vendors too, they got to get paid.
They absolutely have to get paid. Look, I think the cost of capital is high right now, right? So working capital rates, continue to be on the rise. We don't see them necessarily coming down anytime soon. So we're preparing our clients for that. But the want to borrow and have access to capital is still at a high demand. And so at Chase, we're trying to find ways to help clients gain access to capital. If you're a business just starting out, right, we have our Inc. program. If you're looking for working capital, working with your business relationship manager, your local banker, to have a line of credit. We're trying to find ways to make that process super simple and easy, more digitized, so access a lot quicker, right? Money in their hands. That said, back to, just looking at ways to improve their cash flow, as I mentioned earlier, reducing expenses, finding ways to pile up that cash, to your point, to make sure that vendors are getting paid and make sure that they're keeping the staff that they have on hand and happy, because that's really important.
I got another important point here. The name of the show is Stocks in Translation. We're talking about small businesses, so maybe some of them have this path to become a public company, but maybe they don't. I'm just wondering, you're talking about access to capital. That's kind of one of the primary mechanisms or benefits of the capital markets. You list a company, you get a bunch of money, deploy it the way you want, but do you have conversations with some of your business owners that want to get into that league?
Yeah, absolutely. We take clients from again, idea, open that bank account at their local branch, all the way through the process, working with our business relationship managers. We partner with our commercial bank as well, right? So what we consider the commercial space is 20 million and up in revenue. And then we have clients that matriculate through that all the way up to the IB to go public. So, at Chase, we're able to take clients on a complete career journey, and business journey from idea all the way to going public. So, as clients progress, we want to make sure we introduce them to the right partners within the financial institution, whether that's a commercial bank or whether that's our private bank, and that's why having a trusted advisor, around your table as a business owner is so important, right? We talk a lot about business owners having that accountant, having that attorney. It's really critical that they also consider a banker at their table to be a trusted advisor, not to just be someone to contact when, you
need money.
When you need money, right?
It's a little bit late,
right?
Probably.
You want to be able to plan ahead of that, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I'm curious, has there been an influx of people who are interested in starting small businesses in recent years, given just the change of the working environment and the labor environment overall? And then in addition to that, it's a common saying that small businesses are an engine of growth, but when you think about how exactly that contributes to this country and contributes to the robust economy at large, how does that compare then to larger corporations as well, contributing overall?
Yeah, no, great questions. I mean, so one, right out of the pandemic, we saw business formation increase dramatically. It's still at a high level, but I'd say it's starting to plateau somewhat. That said, when you think about the U.S. economy as a whole, I mean, 99% of all businesses are what we consider small, right? Yeah. So you talk about large corporates, it's not a huge percentage, right? That said, 99% are small business, and 33 million, small businesses across the country, right? They employ
contributing a large portion.
Absolutely, yeah. 60 plus million Americans are employed by private sector businesses, and that's quite literally fueling the economy at large. So, when we talk about small business, fueling the economy, it's quite literal. And so we take that super seriously, from a bank perspective. And that's why we invest so heavily in the small business community and make sure that they have accessibility at every level and every life stage.
I want to get to our word of the day here. Adaptability seems pretty straightforward, but I want to get your opinion. What does adaptability mean for a small business owner in America today?
It means literally the word adapt, right? When personally, I see it, each and every day when I get to go out and visit small business clients. But even in my local community, Jared, when I look at, the stores that I visit, we had a diner, that we frequented constantly. Every Sunday, that's where my family, went. Unfortunately, they closed, and it was super sad on our community, and it was a tough blow. But what did the local businesses do? The local Mexican restaurant literally adapted and said, hey, we're going to add breakfast to the menu. Took a couple of the employees from the diner, and now they're flourishing, in a space that they normally weren't, taking advantage of.
Yeah.
And they did that not necessarily from a monetary gain perspective. Obviously, it helps, but it adds some costs to the bottom line. But what were they doing? They were helping the community. And so that's like just a great example locally, and we all can probably see that, as you look at vacant storefronts, right? Vacant storefronts used to stay vacant for a long time.
Especially here in the city.
Right. Now, there's signs are going up, businesses are popping up. So folks at a high level, obviously big words like recession and inflation are concerning. But like when you look at boots on the ground, the small business owners are a resilient bunch, as I mentioned earlier, and they know what they can control. And I think the communities want to support small business. You just see that renewed sense. So for us, it's I love that 67% are telling us, hey, we're thriving. So that's something that we should all feel really good about.
Yeah, a little surprising. And Brooke, I think we got a food story for you. The breakfast menu comes to small businesses, the small diner. We've covered
Breakfast
it.
has been booming lately. We've seen so many people double down on the competition, whether it be McDonald's, Starbucks struggling a bit right now, but obviously there's so many, Burger King really doubling down, and so on and so forth. And I think really appreciate what you said too. Small businesses adapting there, this concept of adaptability, thinking so quick on your feet. And I just spoke to Hain Celestial CEO not too long ago, and she said that she really does think like an entrepreneur. She wants to be quick and move quick. And to hear that small businesses are doing that too is very telling as well.
Yeah, and technology plays into that too, right? I mean, just what we have available to us, and I think small business owners, certain generations, have kind of pushed that out. And I think COVID and the pandemic changed that whole landscape, right?
You have to adapt.
And so here we are a few years later, and things are starting to go in the right direction.
I'm going to ask you to hold that thought there. Thank you. And we're going to have to adapt to a commercial break here for some of our viewers. So for our viewers on the streaming platforms, we're going to take a quick break. And for everybody else, wait 2 seconds. And we're back. All right. We were just talking about adaptability in small businesses, but now it's time to talk about numbers. And this show is brought to you, viewers, by the number 39, and that is a percentage of respondents to this Chase Small Business Survey that we've been discussing who are suffering from inflation. And I bring this up now because we've talked about inflation and labor and all these things, but I want to talk about the Fed. I want to talk about policymakers, and I want to talk about some of the macro statistics that we watch here. All politics is local, all businesses is local, but we got to talk about the Fed here. And we've seen recession risk really evaporate. They started out high at the beginning of 2023. That was last year. They've come down. And now we're talking about business optimism. But what do your conversations look like with some of the small businesses? Do you actually talk about Jay Powell and what he might do?
It's definitely top of mind, I'd say at a high level with some clients, depending on who that client is. I'd say more broadly, like it's not coming up a whole lot. I'd say when I go out on visits, they definitely want to hear my opinion. I think from the banker's perspective, it's like, hey, like back to, as we talked about, for the business owner, like, locally, they know what they can control. And so I would tell you that it's not necessarily a consistently hot topic, from a banker to small business owner perspective. But it is a concern. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to see rates, the small business owner wants to see rates come down. I think everyone was expecting it, multiple times this year. Now it's looking like we're not sure. And as I mentioned earlier, for us, we're saying, hey, look, let's just prepare for what things are looking like right now, and make sure you're set up for success as the balance of the year progresses and we head into next year.
To be fair, I don't think Jay Powell would want to be involved in all these small business conversations. Otherwise, something had gone horribly wrong. But I just wanted to ask you, what are some of the bigger statistics that your clients are concerned about or looking at? What kind of data are they looking at?
What do they follow?
Yeah, what I would say, small business clients are, as much as they're looking at kind of the bigger picture, they're really focusing on their customer base, and what I'd say to any small business owner is really understanding, who your clients are, where are they located, how are they spending their money, where else do they like to, obviously invest their time and energy, and when I think about, what we do at Chase for the small business community, if they're processing their credit payments with us, this is pretty cool. We have a new tool called Customer Insights where literally they have access, right? So they're processing their credit payments, so they can look on their dashboard, and literally a lot of that guesswork is taken out of the small business owner having to do that research themselves, and we provide that data to them.
So they're able to understand who their customer is, what their customer currently is experiencing, and where they're at with their spending power.
100%, and also, get ideas on how to, provide discounts in certain areas, where maybe it's lacking. So,
Can I ask where you get your data from? I mean, because all businesses want to have access to the best data. Is this something that you're compiling off of your own research, off of your clients, or is this something you're aggregating from the national statistics here? Where are you getting it?
yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we do survey our 500 small business owners on a consistent basis, right? But I would tell you, locally for us, we do a ton of listening sessions at JPMorgan Chase with customers, but we also do it with our banker force, right, and getting feedback. So understanding what our clients are telling us, what are the pain points. For me, that's what my job is all about, is trying to eliminate roadblocks for my employees, my bankers, but ultimately for the client, and when we put our clients first, all good things happen.
Yeah, I do want to weigh in quickly, given that we seem to be hyper-local when it comes to small businesses. And what I've noticed in my community is that there's one pops up, ends up being mega successful. Shout out to the Hive at Hoboken. I've heard of it. They make
Yeah.
these incredible cinnamon buns. You have a line down the block, but now they're opening up another location. Rent right now is still at a high.
Yeah.
What reports or local, data sets should they be following in order to understand what sort of opportunities they have in front of them in terms of expansion plans, or really just to understand what is going on in their local towns?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think being involved in your local community, period, full stop, is important, right? So a lot of small business owners are hyper-focused on, obviously, their business, so understanding who's left and right of you, not just your competition, but also local politicians. When I meet with business owners, they're the most successful ones are piped in to the community boards.
They're going to the local meetings.
They're going to the local meetings. They're part of the social media networks, right? Every town has, the Hoboken Facebook group, right? And you want to be able to be on that and see what's happening, right? It doesn't mean you've got to comment on everything. It doesn't mean you need to, be completely involved in every post. But understanding what your community is telling you is so critical for the small business community, especially those that, not only want to be successful in their community, but have ideas of expansion. And I'd say most business owners, that's what the goal is, right?
Yeah.
Well, I want to take time now to segue into another segment of our show that we take a page from the Hollywood playbook and we call it Who Wore It Better? And today is actually a rare three-way tie between three states in the United States of America: California, Florida, and New York. So what is the question here? Each of these states actually raised the minimum wage recently. Some of them took effect as recently as this year. California went from $15.50 to $16 per hour. Florida went from $12 to $13 with an eventual target of $15 per hour by 2026, but it's $13 right now. And New York, it's as high as $16 in the city, $15 in some other places. So my question is, which state wore this increase in minimum wage better, Brooke?
Oh boy. Well, I
Very
have
loaded.
to say, I've been following the California FAST Act, and given that I cover restaurants, that's been heavily weighing on companies at large who have more than 60 locations, which I believe would also be considered a small business as well. Right. And so with that being said, I feel like California probably wore it the worst, if we could start there. And I feel like here in New York, people are just so used to adjusting to wage changes. So I would say here in New York, it seems as though it has been status quo. So if the company has passed along a higher price to me, I have noticed in a large perspective, but not really
That is a
on
very
a
nuanced and
day-to-day.
well-formulated answer.
Thank you.
Well,
How about you?
I couldn't agree more with that.
Oh, look at that.
So yeah, I'd say, so first of all, my 18-year-old daughter would appreciate the wage increase in New York because
I
she's going to
love
be, a camp counselor this summer. So
I can't even
And
imagine
just
making
accepted
that
into a
much.
college, too,
and
right?
just accepted into Boston College. Shout out,
Congratulations.
Mary.
Yeah.
I think, look, at the end of the day, I think small business owners, to your point, they're adapting. The consumer's adapting. I couldn't have said it any better. At a large, when I look at my budget, it's definitely higher what I'm spending day to day, but you don't necessarily feel it as much, look, I think it's good to pay people more. I think if we're getting good quality folks that are being employed, I think that's
Sometimes
the
a big if, but yes.
that's the if.
Yes.
That's the if, and small business owners need to again adapt.
All right. Since I am a Florida man, I spent 35 years in Miami. I'm just going to go with my home state and leave the rest of it to you guys. You guys did it better than I did, so thank you.
Florida did it best for Jared.
Yes. And we've got some time now. I want to get into your past. Like you come from, you're a local business person, and you kind of rose through the ranks at JPMorgan Chase. Just tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so I've been at JPMorgan for 20 years. Started as a banker supporting the Arthur Avenue section. In the
Arthur-
Bronx, yeah,
yes.
yeah. So happy to be a lifelong Bronxite, born and raised, and still reside in the Riverdale section of the Bronx.
We're all very curious for the recommendations when it comes to Arthur Avenue restaurants. We'll take that off air though.
I can give you a full day at
I love it.
Arthur Avenue.
Later.
Yeah, so I started there supporting that small business community, which and when I say community, it truly is a community, and it really taught me a lot as a young banker. What it meant to be customer facing and provide a great client experience. But also kind of break through the barriers of like that, as I mentioned earlier, not make having a seat at the table of the small business owner.
Did you intend to punch through? Did you want to rise through the ranks, or did it just kind of happen?
That
way?
was a great question. Yeah, so I absolutely had every intention of hopefully climbing the ladder, so to speak, but I just didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what the timeline looked like. I didn't know, the first thing on how to get there. Growing up in the Bronx, I grew up with a single mom, and raised, with local jobs, right? So I worked for small businesses. So I always had a passion, and I really wanted to ultimately start my own business, and I just didn't have, obviously, the seed money coming out of school to do that. So for me, helping business owners from a banking perspective was the next best thing, and I really treated it, Jared, like a small business myself. So I looked at my client
for you.
base,
Yeah.
being, my customers, and I had the power of JPMorgan behind me, and so that really helped me, progress and do well, because when a community, sees value in you, they refer you more clients, and
Definitely.
right, and that's how it works. And so I was able to kind of parlay that into a leadership role, and then kind of just continue to climb up through the ranks that way. And I've been very lucky and blessed to be able to do it here in New York and not have to, move the family, because that was something that,
Moved to Connecticut.
Right, well, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, much kudos. I mean, a 20-year career at the same company is pretty incredible. So much kudos to that. There is so much noise out there when it comes to who to watch and where to look. Who are some people or companies that you follow when it comes to having the best advice, especially particularly when it comes to your clientele of small businesses?
Yeah, I keep a close eye on Barlow Research. I don't know if you folks are familiar.
Small business research?
Yeah, they
Sure.
do small business research, right? So we keep tabs with them. I pay close attention to what our CEO Jamie Dimon's saying.
He says a lot,
right?
and a
Says
lot of it is prescient.
Right,
informative.
right. So keep tabs on that. One person that I've gotten to know a little bit over the last couple of years is Will Guidera, who's a former restaurateur,
interesting.
and now he's just released his book Unreasonable Hospitality. So he's doing some great things, and really you talk about. We're hosting events. I'd be remiss not to mention we're doing what we call Go Big event down in Philly. So that's not that far from far of a drive or a train ride from here.
Yeah, well, we encourage people to venture out and see if they can attend. We do have to wind things up here. Really appreciate you stopping by here, Robert, and Brooke, of course. And that's going to do it all for today's Stocks in Translation, but keep it tuned to Yahoo Finance.